this afternoon to introduce to you the Florida Association of Clerks and Comptrollers, Mount Rushmore. Past Presidents George Washington and Thomas Jefferson made a profound impact in the United States of America. Past President Haynie and past President Paula made a profound impact on the Florida Association of Clerks and Comptrollers. Teddy Roosevelt was famous as a hard charger. George Pan Childers' fully engaged, proactive approach to being the clerk of Escambia County would have made Teddy proud. Abraham Lincoln was renowned for his quiet confidence and his humble demeanor. Clerk Barry Baker embodies those qualities. Your panel this afternoon.
Good afternoon. Now I know why Ron said don't interrupt him while he's giving this introduction. So does that mean we get stone faces? Yeah. Well, welcome everybody. This is we're hoping to make this just casual and interactive, and we're going to throw out topics because this is totally unrehearsed. And in an hour and a half, we can just scratch the surface of what communication can be. But by telling you some of the lessons we've learned in office, hopefully we can get you thinking about some things. I had always thought I was a good communicator, and it came as a profound shock to me to find out that sometimes my staff did not know what it was I wanted them to do. And a disappointment that they didn't just ask when they didn't get it. But that was part of the lesson, is that people often won't ask if they don't understand what it is you are trying to convey to them or have them do, and they won't ask, and then they're liable to screw it up. But I did. So, shall we take this in the order that you did the outline?
Well, we have now we're developing a positive relationship with the BOCC.
Oh, yeah, we do. All right, that's what we've got. Developing a positive relationship with the BCC is a fine goal, and it can be even more difficult than talking to your staff. What do you do with that?
In Escambia, we had, I guess, our challenges in that I was new and we had 3 county administrators in a period of maybe 6 or 8 months. Things were just changing and there was confusion of their staff and probably new orders of my staff. So what I did with each and every county administrator that was coming in is, what do you expect of me? What do you think my role is going to be here as a team player with you? Am I going to be your CFO? Am I going to be your finance director? My comptroller? What do you want of me, and how deep do you want me in your transactions? And what I really mean by that is, if they're having conversations about debt and what type of debt and when should we roll this out, our RFP, or if they're doing some engineering contracts, how are we going to write them? I mean, they do have the attorneys for help, but we became their financial gurus, so to speak. So where we landed and where I landed with each county administrator that rolled through in that year was, we want you involved in all the transactions. If you'll get involved with us, we know we do it right from the beginning. And that was a nice feeling, and it was the answer I really wanted them to come back with, because I'm a CPA and that is my strength. My strength is not on the court side, it is on that side. And it was interesting working with them because we started out immediately with a debt issue. They had new staff, I had new staff. They were going one direction. And then they get up there and the county administrator is telling the board, oh, this is conduit debt, we're not liable. And I'm sitting there going, no, it isn't. We discussed this. But I'm talking to him privately because I did not want any sort of public embarrassment to him, to me, to our county as a whole. I didn't want to be a gotcha kind of management or a comptroller. I wanted to work peacefully from the ground up to get it right for all of our taxpayers. So when he realized he had his terminology wrong, he said, let's call up Amy. I said, absolutely, bring somebody up from your staff. I don't want to sit up here and override you. And that's what he did. He brought up his O&B director that went back through the financial obligation does require the county, full faith and credit of the county. There is a CB&A on the covenant to budget and appropriate here. This is not conduit debt. So when we got done, he came over to me and he goes, you know, I appreciate that opportunity. Not only did you make sure we got it right, but you gave me an opportunity not to be publicly embarrassed, have my staff come up there and explain. That was a good start to our relationship. I would rather it be that way versus just watch him fail and hit the button and say, oh, now we're going to correct this. This is not what you did, and it's just not the relationship I wanted. So when we talk about a positive relationship, everybody's situation is different, and the scenario of the transaction is different. But how you handle it can be a positive movement.
What would you have done if he'd given you a different answer? If he'd said mind your own, no, I mean, initially we said, what do you want of me? If he'd said, I don't want you to have anything to do with this, how would you have handled that?
You know, I think that I would have to continue to show him my expertise and my willingness to be a team player. Talk to him, show him some ideas of what we could do, or pat him on the back for things that he has done until we could better that relationship. I got fortunate. I mean, this was a big guy and he was a hard dude in our community, and I was pleasantly surprised when he wanted me to be a team player with him.
So in Pasco, I worked on the board side 15 years before I went to the clerk side, so I felt like the commissioners knew that I had some expertise over there. I tried to serve, like Pam said, as a safe resource for them. I attend all the commission meetings because I want them to know that I know what's going on, or pretend I know what's going on. You said it's recording, don't you? But try to just be available to them. Now, when elections come around and we have candidates out there, I try to watch what they're saying, and when they're wrong, I go to them and say, why don't you come in and let me show you the budget so that you can speak more intelligently. I offer that to every candidate that runs for commission so that he or she can understand and make better statements in the public. So from the beginning, every candidate has had exposure to me, so when they do become elected, then at that point I offer them a tour of the office, which takes 2 days because we have 2 different locations, and try to show them what we do to give them to understand better what we do and all of the complications of the office. Not all of them, but some of them. I attend the groundbreaking events, so when something's happening, I want everyone to know that the clerk cares about it too, and I like when they say, and we want our bills paid, thank you, clerk. You know, something like that to kind of bring that together. And then I do notify them at the board meetings. I have an old business slot where I can tell them what's happening in the clerk's office and remind them of things that are important to the whole county.
First of all, am I the only one that finds it a little ironic that I'm the only clerk that stutters and I'm serving on a communications? But anyway, I would just like to say, yeah, it could work though. It's the thing, I figured that they just had an hour and a half worth of material and that it's where they just needed to stretch it out for 2 hours. The thing of it is where our office is a lot like Paula's. If someone is running for office, we try and bring them into the office because if they are putting bad information out, it's the information is going to affect it's the other candidates, but it's going to affect them and it's going to affect our office as well. So we try and just make sure that people have access to the office, and if they have questions, that's where they're able to come in and ask our staff. I also, once the commissioner is in office, is where we try to make our staff, if we can have our staff where they can are open and are able to work with the commissioners, it has seemed to work well. I had become a commissioner back in 1996, and whenever I came on, the situation at the time was very volatile between all the county commissioners and the clerk at the time. And so we had a situation where I finished out my term, but it seemed like every 2 weeks that there was a fight at the county commission meetings. And so I finished out my term. I didn't run for re-election, and I stayed out of office for 8 years and ran for clerk. And I didn't know what being a clerk really looked like or was supposed to look like, but I was pretty sure I knew what being a clerk was not supposed to look like. And that's the reason that at the time we were not able to go speak to any of the clerk's staff whenever I was a commissioner. Everything was very closed off. You would ask for information, and it would take a long time to get the information back to you. And the information was very guarded. So it's rather that whenever I came in, I wanted to make the commissioners feel open and welcome in our office, and trying to make the offices as open to them as they could possibly be. It's where we've changed that a little bit, and now it's where we have the supervisor of that department always sit in, because it's where there may be issues that it's the supervisor needs to take and work on with them.
I think I had to pick, what? Did we answer a question?
Yes.
No, but not you.
Well, not me, but everybody else.
Oh, everybody else.
So, just as a point of interest, when you guys say you invite all the candidates for commission to your office, so did you have any communications with the existing commissioners who may be facing some of those points to kind of let them know, hey, this is a program we're starting, don't get all bent out of shape? How do you handle that?
The thing hasn't been an issue for our office. It's where that even if I had someone running for clerk against me, it would still be important that that person know exactly what they're looking at. So if I haven't communicated directly with it's the commissioners, but as they came on, as they are elected, I have told each of them the same thing that I've taken to everyone else. So this is the reason most of them know. It's the board that we have is a very young. It's whether they don't have a lot of time as commissioners, and I don't have a lot of time as clerk either. So everyone is kind of in the same boat.
I've told the incumbents that I've met with the candidates, and in one case, well, actually twice, incumbents were beaten by candidates. But first of all, in the first time, the candidate was saying things that was incorrect about the incumbent. And so I said, I think you need to come in and let me go through the budget with you. It's online, but gave that person the opportunity. And in this last election, the same thing. I offered it to this person, but he said he would rather say, well, anyway, they don't always take advantage.
I'm going to say that y'all are much nicer than I am. Well, okay, that's because if I had somebody running against me, I don't believe I'd bring him in and show him what the office was about. But,
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't do it.
yeah, my tenure in office started in an adversarial sort of position. I defeated the incumbent who had had a negative relationship with the Board of County Commissioners, and so I thought that since I defeated this guy, that they would all think I was swell. And the staff conflict was so deep that they didn't think I was swell. And then 2 years later, we had a significant change in the structure of county government. We have a county mayor, and the county mayor was being advised to consolidate all of the departments under her, so I found myself fighting to keep payroll, to keep investments, to have an audit shop because they didn't want us looking at them. But what worked for me is being consistent, and if I didn't find out about something until the last minute at a board meeting, I spoke up nicely, but I didn't let myself be intimidated because it was last minute. And over time, they started involving us more, and And I think we've got a very positive relationship now. And I won't say that it took the whole 25 years to get there, but it took at least 10 of those years to get there. But we have a big county, there are a lot of people, and so the staff is big, and they have a lot of finance people on the board side of things, and they're not always interested in our opinion, but now that they finally learned that we're not trying to get them in trouble, like Pam said, not have a gotcha kind of approach to things, it's pretty smooth now. It's a lot smoother than it used to be. So do all of you sit in commission meetings?
Yes.
Do y'all sit, how many of you sit in commission meetings? It can be really boring, but since I've developed a habit of being there, I find that the citizens like seeing me there. Even if I sit there for 4 hours and all I'm doing is doodling and trying to look interested, the impression is, which is true, that I'm ready to jump in if the commissioners start to do something they shouldn't be doing. For years I didn't have a speaker button, but now I've got a speaker button. I'm not really, I used to have to kind of go, whoa, Madam Chairman, down here. But, you know, it's, in my case, it's been about being persistent and being even-handed with all of them.
And I can see where you can delegate this task and reach the task, the completion of the task, and that is to know what's going on. You can sit at your desk and watch it on a video, but it is about creating a positive relationship with the commissioners and your constituents. And like you say, they know that you know what the issues are, so they can talk to you anywhere that you are in that community and say, hey Pam, what's going on with that boat ramp over there? You know, normally I wouldn't pay attention to a boat ramp, but I was there. I listened to it for an hour and a half of why we're going to put a boat ramp there, and I knew the financial aspects, what it's going to cost. And so here I am in a grocery store listening about a boat ramp, and I was able to tell them, well, this was their thoughts, this was the argument, this was the cost, and here's the positive benefits, and that's why they're going forward. So I end up being a good ambassador for the county as a whole because I'm informed of the issue. And you try not to get too much of your personal opinion in there, but you are a real person and you are a taxpayer too. So I'd rather back my county versus saying, oh, those screwballs, I don't know even why they're putting a boat ramp, we could do it over here. But you become a better ambassador to your community. And they do think because you're there, you'll jump in if that boat ramp wasn't supposed to be there and spending that $220,000. So I go for that reason.
Same here. I think if it's important enough for 5 elected officials to be in a meeting, we have 5 commissioners, it's important enough for me to be there too, to know what's going on and what decisions they're making.
There was an older gentleman in our community giving me a bit of advice that I've tried to follow. So he said it takes the same materials to take and build bridges as it does barriers. And it's where that we have to take and choose which one we're going to be building. And it's where that it's the same with us. And to be quite honest, it's where there are times where you have to build barriers. If they are if something is trying to be done, that is not kosher because we have been given job duties that they can do within our office. But it's where that there are also many opportunities to take and try and build bridges as well. And it's like you say, trying not to play the gotcha scheme. So.
Do you all do the same level of community involvement that Paula was talking about, going from ribbon cutting and all those things?
Selective.
It's a good thing about stuttering. People don't ask you to do a whole lot of public speaking. It's where I go to a lot of different things, but I don't go to everything. I try and be seen a lot, but not heard.
How many of you all try to stay involved in the community at the same level as the commissioners are, and going to things and that sort of thing? I've found that a real challenge over the years to really don't like me after all, I'm trying to think. And then kind of showing up and trying not to feel like the eighth wheel. We have 7 commissioners. I think it is important for us to be out in the community, presenting ourselves as being colleagues of the commissioners rather than employees of the commissioners. We talked about maintaining a clear channel of communication. How do you do that?
I think that attending the board meetings makes a big difference. Always being available to them. Like, often a commissioner's like, hey, that payment wasn't made to so-and-so. So then I'm texting Manny or someone, hey, is that payment, just specifics. They have specific vendors they talk to that are complaining to their commissioner or other issues. So I always try to get the answer right away and respond. My employees appreciate that. They love those last minute texts, like when a board meeting's about to start. But they're very responsive. So we try to keep that open, as well as just advising them about activities that our office is involved with and, caring about their events as well.
And having that clear channel of communications to me is a word that Paula just touched on, and that is quick feedback. When they're asking for something, I took over in a situation where it was a lot of red tape to get an answer. And it could be a week, it could be days, and if something was sensitive was, our definition of sensitive and maybe not yours or theirs. So what I found with clear channels is it's really how quickly you can get back to it. I'm not talking about dropping everything you're doing and changing priorities, and this is a really long records request. Sometimes it's just something real simple about a check. And the fact that you or your staff will get back to them quickly and have an answer, because then they give good customer service to somebody else, that develops a really good relationship. They get the answers that they need, and government is running smooth. And we're not all trying to figure out what our angle is or why we can't give out that information. We typically know if we can give out the information or not. This is our job. If our staff doesn't know, they know protocol as to who to go to see, hey, can we give it back, and turn that around. Get them the answers that they want. We do get situations on maybe HR payroll that will take a little bit more time before we start giving out answers, but you all know that. But I really think that timing of getting back to them is clear, and it makes that positive relationship.
What do you do in those situations where, unfortunately, you don't have a good relationship and there are key people that you feel like everything does have an agenda behind it and you don't know what it is and you feel like you need to be extra cautious?
I would probably continue to be extra cautious.
But that can slow down that process, unfortunately.
It does. And we all know people like that, whether they're in our community or our commission, and they typically don't change. But as probably everybody's mom has taught them, kill them with kindness. I think you're always kind, you're always professional, and you always do your part.
And you're consistent in what you say. Treat everybody the same. I was going to ask you guys, how do you feel about commissioners bypassing you and going to your staff to ask questions or get information?
It's a staff of ours, or the commission has access to our staff. It's where I don't limit that. It's where we do have a supervisor in there if they have a question, and sometimes it'll be a question that they need to address. But I actually, in many ways, try to encourage staff, because it's where that there is no way I can know everything that goes on in my cabinet, even within my office. And I don't have an issue with them taking and going to the staff. If I could address yours a little bit, it's where we have a saying for our office, and it's kind of like our motto. It says, every day is a challenge and every day is an opportunity, and it's all on how we react to a situation. I find that a lot of times it's the thing that is needed most is to take and leave your ego at the door. If you can leave your ego at the door, it'll help move things on the long run. Also, I stuttering with anyone else, it would be considered a liability, but with me, it's actually massive because it gives me an extra 3 seconds to think. I'm giving lessons afterwards. I was talking to Greg about this, and it's a great, if y'all have any questions for me, I want to let Greg take and answer them for me in a little bit. But the Greg brought a good point to the table. It's the biggest thing, it's all about trust. If you're giving them information, whether it's finance or other things within your office, it's whether they need to be able to understand the information for one thing. And second of all, it's whether they need to be able to trust the information that they are getting from your office. And I think those are probably the two biggest things in helping to build that relationship. Is making it understandable and making it something that they can trust.
And I would advise all of you to understand that whether or not you stutter, that it's always okay to take an extra 3 seconds before you answer. I've been accused of choosing my words carefully sometimes when I was talking with the press, and you're damn right, I want to choose my words carefully when I'm talking with the press. They didn't realize it was a compliment. Go ahead.
I'll hold that line because the word is damn. You said it publicly. I did too, to a newspaper reporter. I was so excited about what I was saying, and it was, look at the credentials. He has the best damn credentials than anybody out there. And I'm really not a big cursor. I had just identified a dead guy in the bathroom, and then it turns out to be my friend's father. I was a little wound up. The reporter called as soon as I went into my office, and I'm trying to answer his questions. I'm talking faster and higher, and front page of the paper, you know. Damn, so people words carefully. Don't use that word damn.
Well, even though I say that I do, I don't always. I'm still having a running battle with the general counsel for the city of Orlando because I used the word gobbledygook in referring to how they had not explained the fact. I mean, I wasn't talking about her. I was talking about something else. But she took gobbledygook very personally, and I wish I hadn't said it quite that way. I might have said it was, well, anyway. But gobbledygook is probably not the most thoughtful description. It was accurate, but it wasn't. I think the thing for me about the clear channel of communications is to understand that what you have to do often is over-communicate. And when I was first in office, I would go to each of the commissioners individually to explain complicated transactions or issues to them, because I didn't want to be explaining it at the board meeting and have them be reluctant to ask questions, have them be embarrassed if they didn't understand something, and by going to and meeting with them individually, I could sort of tailor my presentation to their level of understanding. I'd always go to the one commissioner first because she and I got along, and I thought, let me practice on you and find out how to present this to the other ones. But it was very, very time consuming, but it's also precisely what my job is to make sure that they understand, and by not embarrassing them, or try, some of them you can't help but embarrass them, but by trying not to embarrass them, it goes a long way to your credibility.
So I do have an example of one thing that I worked with. The county administration was not on my side on this issue. I wanted the jurors to be able to get free bus passes because our county's big, and I didn't think it was really going to hurt. And in fact, I thought it would help the bus transportation because we'd be advertising that on every jury notice that goes out. So 30, 40,000 a year. So the county administration, I met with the transportation folks, I met with everybody, nobody was in favor of it. I went to every commissioner and told them what I wanted. The commissioners didn't have a problem with it, but of course the county administrator, who had been there 30 years, was not in favor of it. So I brought it up at a board meeting and made the request after I had spoken to each of the commissioners. And it was approved. And afterward, one of the commissioners, the longest-serving commissioner, said, you beat Gallagher, you better make it work. And it, you know, it has worked. It hasn't been that much of an imposition on the county. So, I don't know, I just think advising them individually makes a difference before you get to the board meeting when it's something that might be controversial.
I just have a quick question. When we do that, because I'm a fairly new clerk, we have to be really careful with how we communicate with each one of them about the other's opinions and all. Correct?
Oh, I didn't share any of what anybody else said.
And you are correct.
Right.
In fact, you need to not share the difference of opinions.
We always respect
That gives us sunshine vibration. You know, one of the things I like best about our offices, my office in Orange County, is because we've got an elected chief executive officer in our county, the county mayor. But I can talk to the mayor privately, and it's not a sunshine violation because I don't set policy, I don't vote, and I think it would be a real a serious constraint if we had to deal with sunshine the way the commissioners do, but we have to recognize that they do have to deal with it. So you can't talk to two of them at once and explain what's going on, but individually, it's really the best way to do it. It took me a long time to really get my head around that it was okay if I wasn't running a calculator or adding things up or ticking and tying or going through the audit work papers, that my job was to communicate with the Board of County Commissioners and with the public. And I mean, I must have figured it out at some point, but it's that over-communicating. It's thinking, surely they all understand this. Probably they don't. Some of them have only got a 30-second attention span, and some of them really don't care about any of this stuff. So you've got to kind of tailor it and just keep talking to them. Oh, it's no. You know, I'm not supposed to be on this panel. I'm the moderator here. But you know, you put a microphone in front of me, and I'm probably going to talk. Even when I'm sick, one of the things we wanted to talk about was how to do effective financial presentations to the BCC, and I'm going to let you run with this one.
Okay, so I don't know how, I guess, you know, speaking to your comment about how one might have another agenda, I guarantee all of them have their own agendas, so trying to figure out where that fits in with their attention span is always a challenge. But in my county, we have a lot of new commissioners now, so we're preparing a new financial presentation. We also have a brand new finance director. So we had one that was there 30 years. We have a lot of new, probably all of you do, a lot of really new employees. And so just trying to explain, because a lot of times in board meetings, something comes up and they don't understand, how do we have all this money? And so trying to explain it so it makes sense to them when they're not financial experts is very difficult. And so it's important to present this to them, especially when you have new commissioners, kind of go through the CAFR. We added a lot of charts in our CAFR that aren't required to get the award, but makes sense to the public. And we don't have a popular, I guess we do have a popular annual financial report. We've only had it 1 year. We haven't really published it. I mean, we got the award, but we haven't really given it out to the public yet. But yeah, give it to the public. Yeah, it's probably online. But so I think it's important to make sure that they know you're the experts in that area. And we do a quarterly investment report as well, so they can see how much or how little interest we're getting. So we just try to kind of remind them, as we remind them with the check register every week in the financial reports.
Paula, can you present that publicly, the quarterly investment report?
It's on the agenda. It's a line item on the agenda. It's not on consent. We have it separate. Sometimes they ask questions, sometimes they don't.
But you don't do a presentation per se.
We do a presentation for the CAFR, but not for the investment report.
Right.
I would would say I would do a presentation, but I have not. My first year in office was complicated, and we are in the second year. We have finished the audit. We have several new commissioners, and I thought, okay, this is a year where I do need to sit down with each of them individually and probably do need to do a presentation. But as far as maybe the investment information or TDT, that's just going through our agenda.
You know, I'm guessing there is something, you know.
It's where that our office is, where we will take and do workshops to take and bring everybody on board where that they're at. And a lot of that is at the request of the commissioners themselves. If they are asking for one, our office tries to accommodate that.
We had some commissioners complaining about the investment interest, and so we have a new investment review committee that's meeting in February that will kind of look at that and maybe look at some more adventurous investments. The county is very strict in the investment policy on where we can invest money, so we're trying to branch out from that a little bit, but, you know, to be continued.
You know, when I talk about investments of county money, adventurous is a word I try to avoid. Yeah. Or creative, yeah. I used to always give an annual investment report, and I would try to make it as clear and simple as possible. I was always asked why we weren't in equities, why we were investing in the stock market, until about 2007, I guess. And then they stopped asking me that question. But after that, also the investment report got really boring, and I haven't done it for years. But this year we have 2 new commissioners, and I decided this was an opportunity for me to get in front of them and explain to them how we do the investments, how important it is, how careful we are. And if they leave the meeting thinking, boy, she's really smart, that's okay too. One of the reasons I think that I stopped doing it years ago, we had a commissioner who would, he invariably would ask me a question, and it would be such an off-the-wall, not related to anything question, that I had to take that 3 seconds to keep myself from saying, what the are you talking about? But it's good practice for us, you know, when anybody's not there anymore. I didn't get rid of him. They came, they got rid of him. One of the points we made in our summary was to not talk like an accountant. How do you not talk like an accountant, Pam?
You know, it does take, it does, let me start over. I have a finance person who all she can talk is accounting, and it doesn't matter if we're talking about strawberries, it turns into debits and credits. We can be talking about shopping, and it talks about how it doesn't balance. That's all she can talk about. And I've learned that is not effective communication when she goes and talks to, if there's a commissioner that has a question, or even the county administrator. So now we have a Moses and Aaron moving. And that's okay too, if you recognize that you or someone cannot talk more layman's terms or don't hit all the details. Not everybody is interested in the details. I am. I like the details. I'm a very detailed person. I'm a CPA. They're not. And I've had to learn how to talk a little differently. I won't say that all of my, especially my financial reporting staff, they start getting real deep, like, whoa, bring it up. So we have hand signals in meetings sometimes when we're doing staff meetings with, if there's a commissioner or a county administrator, but it can be challenging.
Yes, we have an accountant in our office, but we try to tell her we don't want to know how the clock's built, we just want to know what time it is. So I think really bringing out the charts, Chris, you're so good. Bringing out charts helps. You know, you can explain it all you want, but if you can show them on a chart, you know, it's worth much more. So that's been successful for us.
And don't use acronyms. It's so much fun to talk in acronyms, but if you're trying to confuse somebody, that's a good idea. If you're trying to clarify an issue, it's a really bad idea. Years ago, well, in Orange County, we have such a major revenue in the tourist development tax. We collected $201 million last year in resort tax. And I'm continually having to tell people that that doesn't mean we've got $200 million in new money to spend, because we've got a $783 million mortgage on the convention center, you know. We've got all these other commitments, but I constantly have to bring it back and say, yeah, we had a good month, this is all good, but hey, this money's already spent, because it really does look like the golden goose, because for the most part, citizens don't pay it. But it's a complicated tax, and we have complicated agreements around it. And I, a few years ago, went back and did a presentation that takes about an hour to do, but I started from scratch so that everybody had the history of the tourist development tax, and answered a lot of the challenges that we've gotten from the paper and from the city about how come we don't ever share it, to show how we had shared it significantly over the years. But it was very basic, and I'm trying to avoid using the term dumbing it down, but it's important for those of us who understand finances and are in it all the time, that they probably don't. And those of us who've been working with certain revenues for a long time, just because we think we know it intimately, doesn't mean that these people who are going to be making decisions about it frankly do. So again, it's that slow over communication. If you're talking to a commissioner and they've got it and they will speed you along, fine. But that has really happened in my experience. That they said, oh yeah, we've already got that. Let's go somewhere else. You don't do a capital. Does anybody have a question?
Is everybody awake? Oh, question, good.
Well, the statement more. I would just add, know your audience. If you're talking to commissioners, if you know your commissioners, you'll have an idea of how high level or how much into the weeds to go, depending on the topic and such. And having a conversation with your commissioners would be different from having a conversation with your constituents, for example. And so, again, know your audience, know what information you're trying to get across to them. That will give you an idea of how high or low to keep the conversation.
That's an excellent point, and it's the reason that Thanks, bragging on you. That's the reason I think it's really important to get to know the commissioners to some extent, because you'll know the ones that you can, because they're all going to perceive things differently and hear things differently. And if you have a feel for the ones that, you know, you've got 30 seconds, just tell them what they need to do, as opposed to the ones who want to take 15 minutes to get the whole history of what's going on with a certain transaction or an issue. It's critically important, because again, at least in my experience in Orange County, my commissioners really want to know all the answers ahead of time. They don't want to have to ask questions in the public meeting, and they don't want to be embarrassed by not understanding something. And if they don't understand something, they're going to slam staff or me for it. It's never going to be their fault that they weren't paying attention when I told them 5 times.
I think another thing that's important is giving them recognition. You know, if I'm out in the community, I'll say, well, the commissioners provided that to the jurors. I'll tell them the commissioners are providing you bus transportation for free. The Friends of the Library provided books here for you to take. You know, just trying to give that recognition as you go on.
There's something I've tried to learn from Buddy Irving. If you watch Mr. Buddy, it's where it's Mr. Buddy doesn't care who gets the recognition as long as the job gets done. And I think that is important, and I'm still having to learn that sometimes. But it's for that, I think it's important to know is the reasoning behind what you're doing. I think we would be a little untruthful if we didn't say that there weren't times that issues arise and they create challenges for us. And sometimes that may come from the board. If it does, is where if you get to the end of that, where if the issue is dropped, and you haven't learned anything from that, or you're not able to go to them and try and find out what was at the root that brought this about, I think an opportunity is lost. So it's important. It's important not to take and throw your sucker in the dirt, to take and keep on going.
So who wants to tell us about the most difficult communication challenge they've had so far? Do I have any difficulties? Paula?
You know, the bus pass issue is a big one. I didn't think we were going to win that. It was just difficult. I'll try to think of another one, but you just had some issues with yours.
There was an issue that we had this past year. It's a situation where the finance function of our office is where some of the commissioners were wanting to take that and put it underneath the commission. It's where I had to work with John Crawford's office. I worked with Pottinger's office, and with Ken Kent, and also with John Wanda from Fred's firm. In the end, the issue was dropped. That's one of those situations where at the end, I actually had to. I tried to go to the commissioners and actually try and talk through what had led up to that situation, because that's not a situation I want to go again. I think we cleared the air a lot, and if I can be honest, in the end, there was some blame to be had by our office as well. And if you can take the criticism that comes from that, and you can look how you can apply it in your office, and you can become a better office than the end, I think there's something to take and be gained.
One thing we just did was we just installed the hotline because we went from internal audit to inspector general. So a 24-hour hotline. So I did a presentation to the board about that, because for their employees and for clerk employees. And I thought there might be questions. We tried to anticipate all the questions. There were no questions asked. And when I sat down, one of the commissioners said, "Well, I can't believe you don't already have that." So I was like, okay, good, because we want to all avoid fraud, waste, and abuse. So I was afraid they might be, concerned, but they weren't at all.
When you present to your board, do you just give oral presentations, or do you always have something for them to look at, either a report or PowerPoint?
I always have a PowerPoint, on an MBA. Like, I think, everything
You
has
can't
to
talk
be
without a
on
PowerPoint.
bullet points, right?
I think the most difficult communication challenge I had happened pretty early in my first term, and we had done a very comprehensive purchasing audit, and there were a lot of problems, a lot of issues, but I knew that my audit team had been communicating with the purchasing staff and various board staff throughout the whole process, and we gave them the report, of course, to review before we made it public. I very naively thought that communication was going all the way up to the mayor's office, and it wasn't. And so I had the unfortunate experience of surprising her with a very negative audit, and it took a while for me to repair that relationship. But I started then meeting quarterly with the mayor to just tell her what audits we were doing, always to make sure that if we found significant problems, we wouldn't wait until the report was ready. We would share that information so they could fix things. And my audit staff meets quarterly with the county administrator to tell them, just to let them know what we're looking at, to find out if they've got any concerns that they want us to audit, areas they want us to get involved in. But it has taken, it's taken a long time, really, to get to where it's as collegial as it is now. And sitting up here, I'm just beginning to think that y'all are all a lot nicer than I am. It's a shocking thing. Did you, we need to communicate not only to the Board of Commissioners, but also to the public. How do you frame that role, and what do you do to communicate your role and your accomplishments to the public?
I do a lot of speaking engagements. In fact, last week we were just trying to, Chamber of Commerce was looking, we have 7 chambers of commerce, by the way, and one of them was looking for new ideas for Business Development Week. So I thought, about a year ago, we should do something on all of the online capabilities that businesses could have to help their businesses. So I suggested that, and they voted. I asked for 4 hours. They gave me an hour and a half. So we had really a comprehensive review of all the things available on the website, from our website, from the clerk's office, as well as the county, as well as the other constitutionals, a few things with the state. And as we were putting it together, we realized, wow, we should probably ask the county to help us on this, because we could go over permitting. They had made a lot of changes. We could go over all of that, but the GIS mapping, there's so much available. So I called the county, and they sent 2 people to help us. Well, they sent 1 person over, and we went through it. And I'll tell you, it was really well received, although they told us we went over way too much information. But just trying to be out there to tell the public what we do and how accessible we are online, that's been very helpful for us.
Probably other than speaking engagements, I really don't know how you go out there. Rotaries, I'll speak occasionally at a Rotary, or I do a lot of volunteering. I have 4 kids, and my husband's an attorney. There's a lot of things we're involved in our community. Maybe our population is maybe 350,000, I think. So I guess I move around, and I try to be a good ambassador of both the county and the clerk's office. But as far as, pat the clerk's office on the back, or what you've done for the county, I don't think I have a good venue. It's just happened chances.
The thing with me, I told y'all then, is how I stutter. I don't get asked to very many speaking engagements, but I just say I do my best work in public. So if I can get a parking lot, check it. And some eggs and stuff, it may take me an hour and a half. I also keep an open door policy. If somebody comes to the courthouse and it's whether they actually see me, it's whether they're going to get to see me. It's whether I always make time. Also, one of the things I do in my office, a lot of the people, whenever they come to the office, it's whether they have kids with them. It may be for an injunction, it may be for anything. But I want to go out there and I have a bunch of ladies at the churches where they say to me they're Happy Meal toys. And it's where I go out there and have a conversation with the young one too. It's where it gives me a chance to take and just have an interaction with them. It's the thing I tell people, whenever people come to our office, unless they're coming for a passport or to record a deed or to get a marriage license, whether they're either going to be at the end of the rope or either they're going to be ticked off. And that's where having something like that, where you engage somebody in that conversation, it may not have the foggiest thing to do about the clerk's office. But if I can engage them in a conversation and take their mind off of what they're doing, or give the kid a Happy Meal toy, it'll work out in the end.
Do any of you do press releases? What are the kinds of things that you do press releases on?
We just had one go out yesterday, or one that was in the paper yesterday about jurors. We just started, in May, we started giving out cash to our jurors because, they would never cash the checks. We have all these stale checks. It was just a mess. So they arranged, thank you, Kim, for jurors to get cash. So on the days they serve, after all the orientation, all the speeches, then they get their cash. And so we've also made it available to them, based on what Ken Burke was doing, to donate to one of the shelters or guardian ad litem. And so far, since May, we've collected over $6,000 for those agencies. So we did a press release on that. We do press release on stalking or domestic violence or whatever. There will be one soon on jury. We try to put one out every month. It goes in the chamber newsletters as well as sometimes in the paper.
I think after the headlines, I just stay away from the media.
I'm beginning to think that those of you who also have the court side of our office have more interesting things to talk about in a press release. The only press release that I do regularly is about the tourist development tax, because that's what everybody wants to know, is how much tax we've collected this month. But I always have to temper that with, that's not new money, I'm a little bit of the naysayer, I'm afraid, at the county. How many of y'all have public relations staff or people or that function at all in your office? Well, I can tell the Sharon Bach is not in this class. Frankly, for years, I thought that was an unnecessary kind of expense, actually, because we're just there to do my job and keep things straight and pay the bills, get people paid, make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. But I'm inclined to rethink that these days. Not that we need big, shiny PR efforts, but to not take, because communicating with the citizens is part of our job as well. And to have people who can often communicate better than accountants be there to help you. My staff would have said spin the message, but I'm going to say craft the message so that it's clear what's going on in your offices. I'm beginning to think that that's more something that's hard to do without. Not that I have a PR person, but I've always been in the PR department. Do any of y'all do press releases? Anybody out there? What do you do them on?
J.D., what do you do?
What do you mean?
Did you do a press release? Topics?
You
didn't do it on same-sex marriage, did you?
No, I did not. Well, actually, I think I did on the not doing the ceremony, but I did do it on the Inspector General rollout, or the Inspector General Department. Significant things like that I think the public would engage.
Okay, so Brent Thurman is actually our public relations person. He just didn't get paid.
He asked if the problem was there.
One of the topics that we talked about was when you have new board, when you have new commissioners, how much time you spend in telling them and sharing with them what it is that you do, since I do think that the clerk and controller's role in government is the least understood one that we have. So share with me what you do.
I'm going to go back to the PIO thing. One thing that we talked about in the executive session yesterday, just amongst clerks, was that people don't know what the clerk and comptroller does. And not only do we need that presence in our community, but also in Tallahassee. And so when we sit here and have a conversation about, oh, we don't really do press releases, or we don't tell people what we do, and we're just talking to commissioners, nobody really knows what we do. And so I'm really just talking to the elected officials here versus staff members. But as part of the staff work here, the clerk, our plates are full on both sides of the house. So just a little bit about that, toot your own horn, or letting people know the demands on you and the responsibility is very important. But as far as new commissioners, we have a new commissioner coming up, and I want to say at the end of the month, or maybe it's March, that I'm meeting with them. I kind of start off with the whole thing I just talked to you guys about it, finance director, comptroller, our role. And don't get a whole lot into the court side, just the comptroller, but I remind them that I'm also the clerk and what we do on the court side, because I want them to understand the comprehension of duties. And then kind of talk to them, what are you interested in? What is your agenda? So that when I see something come up, I could tell them what's going on, or what I see, or what our staff saw. That time, just he and I talking, can ask all the stupid questions and get answers. But most importantly, what I hope they leave there with, what I leave there with, because I'm going to their office, is that they know they can call me. And I have a couple of county commissioners that really like the details. I mean, they want to get all the way down into probably having the authority to approve POs. And I have others that don't really care. They're up here, policy driven, watching, and that's, or TDT. There's another one that's fact president, and so they're watching the TDT dollars. So that one-on-one is not just about the education of the clerk and comptroller to them, but I learn about them and what their interest is and the kind of information they may want in the future. So that's what I do, is just a small orientation, no PowerPoint, probably a 30-minute conversation unless they have something they want to talk about.
So I like to give them a tour. We have facilities in 2 different cities. They're 40 miles apart, so I ask them for 2 different days. And I like to show them the facilities, whether or not, finance, but as courts as well, so they can see, because they do finance the facilities. I like them to see what they look like. I like them to sit in court for a few minutes, and I like them to go through and see how crowded people are in some cases, so they know, we're using these facilities well. I also like them to see the storage, because most people have no idea we keep evidence. I like them to see the vault. I like them to see how huge the storage rooms are and talk about the precautions we take. And, I just like to spend that day. And plus the other thing is we have 350 employees. So I take them, I announce, we have a guest today. We have, an honorary guest. This is your new commissioner, and make a big deal about it to every section we go to, so that, they can feel that pride as well. You do your orientation.
So then what we try to just bring the commissioners in where they can see exactly what's going on in our office. We try and introduce them to the different aspects of our office and what all we do. I have to say that I've been here 6 years, and there's times I'm still trying to figure out what all we do in our office, because it's constantly changing, and it's where really they're on with updates. But it's where I don't think many of the commissioners or the people in the community have any idea really about what the clerk's office does. So as you have a chance, it's it's important to try and educate people on what all of your office does and the importance of those tasks. Because it's where you mentioned the evidence vault and stuff like that. A lot of people really have no idea of how important all that is, and the integrity that is involved in trying to make sure that the documents and the evidence are handled appropriately.
Let's have some questions.
I got 2. One of them is, I'm just wondering if all 4 of you are working with commissions that all the commissioners get along, or is there, I just wondered, I have worked with county commissions where they all are very cooperative with each other, and it makes it so much easier for the clerk, versus working with commissions that don't get along, and you try your best not to get caught up in their problems. Just wondered how it is with that.
I can start. So we've had meetings, ours do not all get along. We've had meetings where commissioners have walked out because they're tired of that topic being brought up again. And we have one, one in particular that's not on the good side of any of the others. We have 2 brand new that are just trying to figure out what's going on. And we have a speaker designate who is trying to make us a charter county. So right now, from the chairman has decided that he wants to take reins of that, and you could have read all of this in the paper, so I'm not saying anything that's not public, but decided that if we're going to be charter county, that we're going to decide that in Pasco County, not in Tallahassee. And the speaker was at the last board meeting and said, or maybe 2 meetings ago, I'm not sure, and said, we will be a charter county. Whether you do it or we do it from Tallahassee, you will be a charter county. So we have all of that going on as well. But no, they, I don't think that they would choose to spend any time together. They don't anyway because of the sunshine law, but they don't get along.
We are a charter county, and I realize that sitting here listening to you all talk, that the dynamics can be very, very different, because we have 6 commissioners who are elected from single-member districts, and then we have the county mayor who is elected countywide, and it is not uncommon for it to be sort of the board against the mayor kinds of scenarios and getting things done. And that really, I mean, the chairman has her, the mayor has her staff who are going to tell her everything that's going on, and they may filter the message that's going to the Board of County Commissioners. And I have found that one of my roles is to make sure they know everything they need to know when they're making a decision, not just what the mayor's staff has fed them. I was shocked and appalled years ago when I heard county staff talking about not telling the commissioners everything. And while I still do it, I have, after all these years in office, come to understand why sometimes they don't really need to know all that. It's just kind of, get it. But, it's a process. Are all 3 of you not charter counties? How many of you guys are charter counties? Well, pay attention, because I'm telling you, it changes the dynamics. We have charter review every 4 years in Orange County, and so it seems that we're constantly churning it and constantly appointing 15 citizens to come in and theoretically take a look at every aspect of county government and decide if something needs to be changed. And a lot of times when you bring in citizens like that, they figure they're supposed to change something. There must be something wrong if we're looking at it this much. And it is a constant struggle to really try to keep some continuity about the county structure. One of the challenges that I have found is when the Charter Commission wants to change the structure of government because of the individual in the role, and that's a real challenge too. With, for example, our tax collector who just got elected as a dead person last time, and I'm not kidding. But he had been in office a very long time, and he was very open about the fact that he didn't come into the office much, and he was getting his salary and his pension, and he deserved it, and he said he was involved in all the policy decisions. There must not have been many. But because of him, and because of his, and by the way, he got elected every time with opposition. People did run against him. But because of his, the way he made the office look like it wasn't a big deal, that it wasn't really a job, you didn't have to be there to be an effective tax collector, both the Charter Review Commission and the Board of County Commissioners have really gotten the burr under their saddle. They are going to eliminate the office of tax collector. And while they're in the process of eliminating, maybe we'll eliminate, she's kind of a pain in the neck, maybe we'll eliminate that office too. I should tell them that maybe the next controller will be nicer than I am, but it's going to be a while before there is a next controller.
Sounds like you couldn't have to collect taxes. Somebody's gonna do it.
Well, they think they can roll it into a board function. Well, we also have a board staff person who has convinced himself and several board members that that's a ministerial role. We could collect the taxes over here and it wouldn't be a big deal. So it's been a real challenge in my county.
One other thing I just kind of wanted to touch on, I've talked to several clerks about this, is the relationship when you have a church development council. I find that's one of the biggest struggles that I have in my county, because the county commissioners want to spend money that they shouldn't be spending, instead of using ad valorem dollars, they're trying to find a way to use tourist dollars to make things happen, and they don't want to hear that they can't do it. And then you have your tourist development that's wanting to spend money anyway and everywhere, and they think they don't even need county commission approval to do anything. I just wonder how y'all handle that challenge, any of you that have tourist development. Because that's a big issue.
I do.
Well, so there are different rules, you know, the Tourist Development Council has different rules. It's kind of it's a challenge for us in finance because we're processing alcohol, drinks that were, you know, it's just a whole lot different. We're not real comfortable with it, but
But
that's
you
what the
do
TD
keep a
said.
good eye on it too, I mean, the financial part of it, the bills they turn in.
We do.
It's very different in Orange County. We had a Convention and Visitors Bureau, which is now called Visit Orlando, and they are significantly separate from the county. They're a separate organization. They've got a huge board, and they, by contract, get a certain portion of the tourist development tax, with the caveat that you're supposed to spend it on promotion for Orange County. And because our tourist development tax is so strong, they get a pretty big chunk of money. There have been issues in the past with the board not being comfortable with how they spend it. You know how sometimes something that's really not a huge expenditure, that's the thing that gets the public's attention. You know, yeah, exactly. $5,000 they'll talk about for a day, and then they'll spend $20 million without any discussion. With the head of the Visitors Bureau flew to Dubai, which was a legitimate place for him to go. He's a pretty big guy, and he flew first class. And first class to Dubai is, I'm going to say it was about $9,000. It was a whole lot of money. And we had a huge blow up about that afterwards. You know, I don't pay their bills. I don't let the commissioners fly first class. I mean, if they want to upgrade to first class, they can pay it themselves. But there was a lot of discussion about the county getting more involved in their expenditures, and kind of the compromise that we had come to. First of all, I do audit them. So, and it was funny. I did a significant audit of the Visitors Bureau, and it was to see if they were in compliance with all the things they were supposed to be doing. And they were in compliance with all the things they were supposed to be doing. And the board got mad at me because I hadn't found them doing anything wrong. And I thought, you know, they ought to be happy about that. But our Visitors Bureau puts their check register online, and the county commission gets it every month, and it's there for them to question any expenditure that they want to. To my knowledge, now that they get all this extra information, they don't question them at all. We look at it, and if something looks a little out of line to us, we'll call their finance people and make sure that we're comfortable with how they're doing it. But I do not approve their expenditures. So they're out there with a huge multi-million-dollar budget to get in as much trouble as they want all by themselves.
Just out of curiosity, so do you know if y'all are at the minimum level for the tourism tax, or what is that minimum level? I thought it was like 2%. I mean, maybe.
We have six.
Wow.
It's one of the reasons the number's so big. It was, and it's an interesting agreement that was made back in 2007. The sixth penny that was put in place in 2007, the county doesn't get any of it. It is split 50-50 between the Visitors Bureau so that they can up their advertising, and the city of Orlando so that they can pay for the new Amway Center. It's entirely dedicated to those bonds because that's a legitimate use of the tax. The thing that my office really hammers in is that we use it for, legal purposes. We're kind of hung up on that kind of stuff. But again, I'm constantly explaining to people that just because a whole bunch of money's come in, that doesn't mean that's new money. There's not an extra $20 million this month that we can go spend on whatever we want to spend it on. That was part of the compromise when the city wanted to build the 3 venues. We have a new performing arts center. We have a refurbished Citrus Bowl. You should go visit them when you're in Orlando. They're lovely. And we have a rather significant event center that hosts rock concerts and the Orlando Magic. But that was like a $1 billion spending plan all at once. And in order to get the tourism industry's buy-in to it, the commissioners had to agree to put in place the 6th penny, and give half of it to the Visitors Bureau so that they would get that extra kick in their advertising budget. In fact, the first 2 years, a year and a half, I'd have to check, the first several months that the 6th penny was in place, it went entirely to the Visitors Bureau, so that over a couple of years they got an extra $50 million bump in their advertising. And now they're paying it back 5% a year to get it back to where it's an even split now. But yeah, we bring in a whole boatload of money with our tourist development tax. But we've got this, one of my favorite slides talk about making presentations and visuals. I wish I had it with me. The people who work in the industry, the people who are out on our drive, understand how big the convention center is. But the people who are more downtown oriented don't really have a sense of why we need to spend so much. We're right now in a $187 million rehab project at the convention center. And I've got a slide that's the footprint of the convention center overlaid over the city of Orlando. I call it the convention center that ain't downtown. And it illustrates, and then you've got, from this picture, then you've got the little tiny event center and the little tiny performing arts center and the little tiny Citrus Bowl and the real big convention center. And that sort of visual has helped me often explain to people why, yeah, the convention center is built, but B, A, we're still paying for it, and B, we've got to keep it looking spiffy because Disney and Universal have upped the game in Orange County, and everything has to look good. Yeah, that's being great. Years ago, a member of my staff gave me this quote. I wasn't really sure what their point was, but I have kept it on my desk ever since because communication is about our biggest job, and it's very difficult if you are task-oriented to really focus on that's what you need to spend most of your time doing. But having this on my desk has been helpful. I think it's about time for us to get to questions, which we've been trying to do all along, unless you all have got something you want to.
Well, I have a reminder from my staff that we have a newsletter that goes out, the Clerk's Connection, and it kind of goes through, I think it's about every other month or so, goes through some of the things that are happening to advise some of the attorneys, whoever's on our list. We have an email list that we send it out. We also are active with Making Strides Against Breast Cancer. That's we've had a lot of people in our office with cancer before even I had cancer. We had chosen that as our charity of choice. So we do a lot of things year-round to raise funding for that. And so that gives us some press. We don't do it for that reason. We do it to try to help future people with cancer.
Tell me again who your newsletter goes to.
We have a list. A lot of attorneys are on the list. Some, I don't even know who's on the list. Does anybody know?
But you don't send it out to the public.
Anybody can be on the list.
Do you post it on your website?
Is it posted on the website?
Sign up for it.
Yes.
Oh, sign up. Okay.
I think there's a few journalists on that list as well.
Yeah, I think all the reporters get it. Sometimes they get some of the information and call us about it.
You know, we tried doing a newsletter years ago, but nobody was particularly interested in writing it, and it kind of fell through the cracks because it ended up being my job to write the newsletter, and I didn't have time. I was out communicating for gosh sakes. I didn't have to write a newsletter. How many of y'all do a newsletter? Just a couple? And how do you distribute it? Back in the back. How do you distribute it?
We actually send it out electronically. It's really oriented primarily about court-related activities, not controller functions. And so, although when we were doing the same-sex marriage, we actually put a little stuff in there. And we send it out to all the attorneys and a variety of other people that are primarily interested in court-related activities. We don't send it out on a schedule. We send it out when we have news that we want to communicate. So when we are upgrading our website, when we're changing our judicial website, which is where our attorneys connect to us, we're doing e-filing, we're doing training classes on e-filing. When we're doing any of that stuff, we basically put out a newsletter and it's electronically distributed, and then we post it on our website so that all the archives of that are available.
It's a thing our office does. It's not a newsletter, but it's where that our it's the person that heads up it's the management of our records. It's where he is also a historian of our county, and so he does some speaking engagements on behalf of our office. And it's actually very popular and well attended by the people. And I've learned a lot myself, but it's been a great outreach for our office, and has actually brought a lot of interest with people coming to use our records and stuff, and also doing some family history, things like that.
And Barry doesn't have a tourist development council because he has a song way down on his way.
If only we had a song.
It's all right.
Oh, yeah. Everybody knows it, that's right. Well, midnight Harry Potter. Yeah, it's cool. Questions? Does anybody have a difficult communication issue that they got through or haven't gotten through that you want to share with us? So, is that it? You got a lot of company cooking? Or else they all had a lot of pasta for lunch. If you don't have any questions, I think we're about ready to wrap this up. And I thank you very much for your attention.